Hey, I got a quick question for you. Are you showing up as the expert authority in your business, making sure that your message is on point and your branding is reflective of your go-to authorityness? Hi, I'm Christine Blosdale, your expert authority business coach, and I have a way for you to rate your expert authority prowess. And you can check it out at expertauthorityquiz.com. It's fun, it's easy, and it's something that you really should be doing to see where you level up. If you want to establish trust with your audience and potential customers and clients, you might want to take this quiz. Once again, head on over to expertauthorityquiz.com. That's expertauthorityquiz.com. Welcome to the Expert Authority Coach Podcast, the one-stop spot for entrepreneurs, coaches, authors, and business owners just like you who are ready to rise, shine, and finally be seen as the go-to authority in their field. I'm your host, Christine Blosdale, also known as the Expert Authority Coach, and my mission is to help you build a magnetic brand, grow your visibility, and turn your expertise into real, lasting influence and income. If you want to dive deeper, head on over to my website, expertauthoritycoach.com, where you can explore all the groovy stuff that I've created for you. And you can even book a free discovery call with me. I'd love to hear from you. Once again, head on over to expertauthoritycoach.com to book that free call today. Alrighty, so let's jump into today's episode. Welcome back to the Expert Authority Coach Podcast. I am that there Expert Authority Coach, Christine Blosdale, and I'm very happy to have my guest with us today. You know, everybody's talking about it, and if you have not jumped fully into the land of AI, all of these tools, and we're not focusing just on ChatGPT today, but we're talking about artificial intelligence, how it can apply to your life, your business, all of that. My guest today is the expert to talk about it. David Dean is an author, speaker, and enterprise AI strategist with 20 years of experience helping organizations navigate technology, governance, and change. And man, is there change afoot. For the past decade, his work has centered on AI, automation, and data transformation across consulting, healthcare, insurance, hospitality, and other very complex environments. He works with leaders to understand not only what technology can do, but what an organization must be able to see, decide, and govern before that technology can create lasting value. And we're going to get into that because I've worked for some nonprofit organizations that really can listen to the show. His latest book is called An Inbox Between Us, AI and the Reality of Modern Work. We'll dive into that book as well. David, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Christine. I'm very excited to be on.
Yes. So, okay. For the person who is listening to this, who, right now, maybe their experience with AI that they think is just jumping into ChatGPT. I like to tell people we've been surrounded by and using AI a lot longer than ChatGPT, the arrival of ChatGPT. But can you just fill our audience in a little bit about AI and how it's been a very important part of our lives without us knowing it?
Yeah, so AI has been around for many years of different interpretations, with it. You think about it of behind the scenes work of any kind of technology that has been used to help figure out or augment our behavior in some degrees, in some fashion. Essentially what AI has been doing. You just have never seen it.
Yeah.
Essentially now it has been commoditized to a certain degree where it has been brought to the forefront. It's been given the ability to provide a self-service way to capitalize and utilize it because initially it's focused around human language and bringing about human language. And it's amazing if you think about the influence of human language does with all of us. We're all storytellers. You tell a story, I tell a story that influences our lives. It changes things that we do. So essentially AI has been crafted to a certain way in our image on how we behave with it. chat bots and all those kinds of things that are around it, chat agents or instant messaging or emails. Well, I
Mm,
mean, we've been doing all this stuff for years with it. And so now, but now there's a response. There's an immediate response now in this dynamic, and it can provide a lot of opportunity around it. But a lot of people are still like figuring out what that means. Like
yeah.
I still I don't know what this relationship means for me. I'm talking to a machine essentially, and I know it can do stuff, but I I don't know how to handle it. I don't know how to deal with it, with around it, and what value and what advantage or disadvantage to a certain degree. Like, what should I do with it? What should I not do with it? Despite all the statistics and numbers and all the flashiness, most people are still figuring this out, especially
Right.
in larger workplaces and that kind of stuff. And they're still trying to figure out what that relationship is going to be in the near term and the long term. And that's ultimately where I'm trying to help people understand what that's going to be, and so that they can be real for them.
And also, I like, because I've watched a few of your interviews and seen a few of your videos on your on social media, and what I really appreciate is, oh, organizations and companies who feel that if they bring in AI, everything's going to be honky dory. Things are going to run smoother, more productive. But you raise a really important point that the AI is reflective of already what's there. So if you have a
Hmm.
dysfunctional system, right?
Hmm.
Or you've got mechanisms within your company or your organization that are not flowing very well, and
Hmm.
it's dysfunctional, AI is not going to be able to save it because it's just going to reflect that dysfunction, right?
100%. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I talk about like, oh, AI is going to save us. It's going to make us a whole bunch of money. We can
Right.
save a bunch of time and effort and all that kind of stuff with it. But the reality is that if your organization has a lot of challenges with their behaviors and you bring in AI, what is AI? It is a tool to industrialize human behavior. So, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to industrialize dysfunction in your organization as a
Right.
part of this. So, my message from my book, like ultimately, is that what if the frontier of AI is not tooling, but organizational self-realization?
Hmm.
Here's an opportunity where we can take AI and understand how we behave as an organization so that we can truly understand what changes we need to make and become real. We have to we have to recognize we have a problem first.
Yeah.
And I know you talk to a lot of psychologists and that kind of thing. What is the first step? You have to recognize you have a problem
Right.
and a lot of issues with it. So you have to recognize you have a problem, and then where do I go find that? How do I discover that? How do I understand that? Because if I can understand that, sometimes it's not AI that solves the problem. Sometimes it's just a conversation, like your
Yeah.
dysfunction and that kind of stuff. And so it's like, why put a tool in place when you don't need one, as a part of this? And so I go into, there's a lot of things around that dynamic, but that scales. That's the issue. Like people are talking about how do you scale AI? You scale AI by allowing people to understand their own self-realization as an employee, as a team, and as an organization. That is the frontier. And the companies that have figured that out are the ones that are going to excel.
Oh, I love that. And that also applies to the entrepreneur, to the solopreneur
Mhm.
as well. There's a
Yeah.
saying, and I try and reiterate this with my clients. It's so important. The most important thing are the prompts. It's what you ask of your AI. And if it's Perplexity or ChatGPT or Claude, whatever you're using, so much of it is that. And the saying of shit in, shit out. It's
Hmm.
it's true. You have to be extremely clear. But what I've discovered now, I call my ChatGPT Charlie, and Charlie, I think I'm very very polite to Charlie. I thank Charlie when he comes up with something amazing, and but it's all reflective of everything that I've put into Charlie, right?
Hmm.
So Charlie knows my business. Charlie
Hmm.
knows what I'm capable of in my business many times even more than I do
Hmm.
because he's gone through, my website and been with me and my clients and all of that stuff. So he
Mhm.
knows how I think, not just how
Mhm.
I speak, but how I think. But it's so important on those prompts and to because AI will complement. They'll. You're the greatest thing since sliced bread. That's a wonderful idea, Christine. What a great. They lie to you. It can lie to you,
Mhm.
right? But when you ask it to get down to the nitty gritty and go, you know what? I may not be firing on all pistons here. Is this a
Mhm.
shitty idea? Is this stupid? Is this, and it'll come back with this very wonderful, thoughtful, you know what? It's not stupid. You're on the right track, but have you thought
Mhm.
about this? And this is where I think, as a society, as human beings, we could really utilize AI. I know right now there's so much stress and concern and rightful concern about these data centers, right? And the
Mhm.
resources that it can use. And my little brain, I always think against the grain. Instead of looking at it too and going, "Oh my gosh, gobbling up all the water resources and the energy and all of these things." And I'm thinking, here's a really smart tool. Why don't we ask AI to figure out how to run these systems without depleting these resources? And it
Mhm.
doesn't seem like anybody's asking that question, David.
Yeah, no,
I mean,
it's interesting because I've asked this question, and there's a lot of ways to approach this. But what I want to get I'm going to get to that here in a sec. But what I want to talk about what you're talking about, this relationship, because the one thing that I feel most people that are talking about AI publicly around that, they're not talking about how it needs to be talked about. And because people are grounded in reality, with it. Even though a lot of people like to read about the what ifs, in order to be able to get to the what ifs, you need to understand what the what is with that. And so I talk about what you are essentially talking about are signals. The one thing is AI, and I'll say this for all of your listeners around this, is that what does AI not have that humans have? And humans have lived consequence and lived experience. That's why we're valuable as humans, and that's why we will always be valuable. That's kind of my message to companies and executives and all these people. Why do you hire people in the first place? It's because people matter. Their lived experience and consequence tell stories, and you essentially are hiring people for that, not because of the job description, but for that last item, other duties apply. They're there to deal with the ambiguity
yeah.
of the position and them to think on their feet and deal with situations and handle situations and all that kind of stuff. So, what you are essentially talking about is what I call the behavioral record. And that behavioral record has signals in it. And this is where I talk about understanding and self-realization is that AI is great at asking questions against those signals to discover where those opportunities are in order to be able to bring about ideas, change, all different types of things with that. That's what it's firing off of.
Right.
But that's only part of the equation. The other equation is you.
Yes.
You're a part of this. It's not AI only. It requires both of you to work together in order to be able to have a symbiotic relationship because there's things that AI is going to do well and there's things that you're going to do well and you still matter as a human. And a lot of companies nowadays are starting to understand that lesson because they let go a whole bunch of people and think AI can replace them. And like, guess what? When a
No.
bad situation happens,
Yeah.
who are you going to call, in that you call the human around it. And so until AI is crawling out of the computer, living amongst humans and having an understanding of lived experience and lived consequence, humans
Yeah.
will always matter.
Yeah.
But regarding what you were talking about, I think there are ways to strategize around this, like asking AI to help solve the problem is part of the problem, but there's also very unique ways to approach it. Like, there's a lot of fear around nuclear plants with it. Well, the fear is like 20 years old of what nuclear plants were. What if we told these companies to say, hey, if you want to put in these data centers, you need to build a nuclear plant. You need to fund building a nuclear plant. And then all these communities would gain all this opportunity from an energy challenge. You know, you hear about Texas, you hear about a lot of different other areas
Right.
where they power goes out, all that kind of stuff. But if they had a nuclear plant, they'd be perfectly fine. And then their data centers would be perfectly fine for all this different type of stuff. Water, you know, what if we started negotiating from state to state? Like, hey, I will give you my energy, you give me water, you know, in that regard. So let's barter between state to states and that kind of thing. I think there are very strategic ways. It's just the politics on trying to get through that and adopt
Well,
it and that type of
yes.
thing.
And I believe that technology, here's the thing too, is that I believe technology changes so quickly. You
Hmm.
know, back in the day, the first computer was the size of like a huge room, right? And
Hmm.
now I have one in my pocket.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So what we see today
Hmm.
in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years time could be something in our pocket. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm totally exaggerating, but what I'm saying is that if we're forward thinking, and
Hmm.
especially if we ask AI to be a co-creator in this,
Hmm.
and to say always in the back of the ideas and the concepts and the suggestions that AI gives us on how to move forward, and not just with the data centers. I'm talking about
Hmm.
humanity, right? We're at war. Everybody's there's wars happening. Like if the goal is to make the world a better, safer, more equitable place, what are things that we can put in place now to make that happen, right?
Hmm.
I remember as a kid watching the Jetsons, David, and I thought
Yeah.
by the time I was 61 that we'd be flying around in little saucers and I could push a
Hmm.
button in my kitchen and have a meal all made for me, right? That didn't happen, but
Nope.
a lot of other things did happen that
Yeah.
we could never have forecasted. So that's what I'm hopeful for. Let alone all of the personal stuff that, you know, the different software and programs that I use that make my life so much easier and I'm able to create. I'm a creator. I'm my human design is projector. And I'm just
Hmm.
like I got to write books. I got to just keep creating because that's what
Hmm.
keeps me happy, right? But I think that there is a co-ownership, a co-authorship that we can do with AI to make things better. Well, you do it with making companies better, right? And
Hmm.
organizations.
Yeah. No, I mean, it comes down to intent.
Yes.
100%. It comes down to intent because a tool can be used in a good way and a bad way, you know, with it. And I write a lot about this like afterwards because, you know, there's things that you can use AI in such a way where it provides a lot of value, a lot of opportunity, but it can be used a way to take advantage of people in a very negative way with it.
Yes.
And it comes down to intent. And but with what you were saying is that there's a ton of opportunities with it. And even our sci-fi storytelling, you know, from all the movies, that kind of tells us. You look at Commander Data, you look at, you know, Star Wars, you look at like all the droids and all the things that have companion to us. Do you see humans gone? No,
No.
they are side by side. They serve in a situation and integrate with how we work as a society. It just becomes naturally integrated of some fashion. The difference is that we can't see it. You know, and I think that's the hardest thing is
Yeah.
if we, which is where the big push around robots and that kind of stuff, you know, you see Tesla trying to come out with robots and that kind of thing, but we're still a long, long way to like have that true kind of human interaction around robots and that kind of stuff and have it be fully functional in a very ambiguous world of humans.
I can't even get
But
my Roomba to work properly.
yeah,
So,
I
yeah.
know exactly.
Yeah, and there's the
So
hero's journey. That's the thing, the
yeah.
Joseph Campbell, right? The hero's journey, which even with
Mhm.
Star Wars, with 3CPO and
Yeah.
C3, whatever,
Yeah.
3CPO and R2D2, and all of
Yeah.
these amazing, you know, robots. It was the hero's journey that was
Hmm.
the important part, right? And it
Hmm.
was the Darth Vader coming in with the all of that great stuff. Who, by the way, is like I connected with Darth. I When I was a kid, Star Wars was it. Star Wars
Hmm.
was it was other wor- It was so powerful, that
Hmm.
film and the storyline. We all
Hmm.
understood that, but I resonated with Darth Vader. I was like, yeah, you know what? He's got the wardrobe. He's got the he can do this thing with his fingers.
Yeah.
crush your trachea with his little fingers. I thought that was quite important. But yeah, I think it's really interesting what the possibility. So in your mind, David,
Mhm.
what's in the future, and not looking not 50 years, but maybe even 3, 4, 5 years from now,
Mhm.
what do you see happening with AI? What do you hope happens with artificial intelligence?
So I think the biggest thing is that first of all, recognizing that change takes a long time. So a lot of people think that AI is going to take over everything and it's not going to take over everything. I think the biggest thing is that I think it'll stabilize to a certain extent because it's changing all the time with it. But I think at some point we're going to have the big companies that are offering AI and the stabilization of kind of offerings out there because we're going to get to a point where as AI is now, it's not going to really provide um, they can keep adding to it, but like the behavior is not going to really change with this. So then you're going to probably see more creative uses. Like, so where can we apply this? Where can we adapt, use of AI in different ways? And it comes down to asking the right questions and trying things out and experimenting on stuff. Let's say having the right intent. And I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest thing is that I think there's going to be more regulation at some point because there needs to be. There is some very scary things that can be done with AI with it, and I don't think any of us want that kind of stuff. And so I think that there's going to be, at least to some degree, some universal, across the countries to basically say, yeah, we're not going to support this. We're not going to support this use. You're going to see kind of universal policy with that. To a certain extent, this is part of the reason why I put my book out because the most scary part has not been revealed until my book. And what I mean by that is this is why I talk about the behavioral record. Because the one thing is this is not being talked about and it's slowly trying to be controlled, but they can't control that. What is the most scariest thing that you can think of that an executive or leadership in an organization would be to find out relating to AI? And the number one thing is what they're doing behind the scenes.
Right.
And this is what I talk about the behavioral record is that when you talk about self-realization and intent around self-realization, that has to come from somewhere.
Oh, right, right,
And
right.
and so when you start asking these questions, where do you think it's coming from in an organization? It's coming from your communication and collaboration data, your emails, your chat messages, your transcripts, your files, your comments. When you start using that as a lens, it tells stories there,
Yeah.
all kinds of stories with it, good and bad. There's a lot of positive out of it, and there's a lot of things that some companies are probably not comfortable with. And I talk about this in the book because one of the most important skills that I think a leader needs to have today in this AI world is authenticity.
Oh,
Being
hallelujah.
authentic. Yeah, authenticity. You're the same person no matter what,
Yep.
with it. And when it comes to any leader, even if someone may not agree with your philosophy, as long as you're the same person, they understand what to expect, they will still respect you because you are who you are and there's no behind the scenes version of you, type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when I talk about the behavioral record, people can start putting things together out of this record that's in your email and chat messages. So it's harder to hide things that you're doing as an organization, the decisions you're making, all that kind of stuff with it. So now, is it always going to be right? Absolutely not. But does it need to be 100% right in order for someone to understand? And the answer is no. They just need just enough information to put the pieces together.
Yeah.
And it was funny because I spoke at a conference for like compliance and legal, and I gave my presentation on this. I call it AI in the organizational mirror. And when I said this to them, they're like, we're not ready for this. Like like the
Right. All the legal,
conceptually, we're like,
right.
yeah, yeah, because I said if you can put as many controls as you want, but you'll strangle your large language model and it'll be completely ineffective for all the other things that it can be used for with it. So
Right.
if you try to put a bunch of policies and controls, it's not going to happen. So what does that mean? You need to come out and say, hey, we recognize this is who we are as a company, this is what we do, and this is how we're going to do this, and we're going to be more transparent on the things that we do and be more forthcoming. I think that's what the change is going to be because you can't hide from it. People can do this right now because essentially AI, like self-service AI using Claude and connecting to it, it's essentially an e-discovery tool for your company. So I
Right.
can ask any questions and do all these different types of things, and it has a lot of power in many different ways. And so that's why I keep saying intent. Intent is critical in regards to understanding the use of AI and how to control it.
Intent is the key. And what is that? They're saying is with great power comes great responsibility.
Yep. Yep.
And
Uncle
just this,
Ben.
yeah, and just the same, fire can be used to warm you on a cold day or cook food and nourish you or, destroy, completely wipe out a town or just, a
Hmm.
forest. So there's great things that can be this technology can be used for, and then there are those not so great things. I keep flashing back to Terminator and what is it, Sarah Connor?
Yep.
I just, gosh, that original Terminator was a great movie.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, it
It
was. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
really set the stage, and it's so funny because now if you look at, I think if we, okay, like this is gonna be our homework, everybody. You need to watch the original Terminator and just pick up what she's, the stuff that they're saying and see if it's
Mhm.
relatable to today. But yeah, I think your intent is so important, and I guess that's where the key is, David. Like, I know that my clients, myself, we use AI. I love to use AI to uplift, the people that are in my world, the people that read my books, the people that are my clients and that listen to the podcast, to
Mhm.
inspire them and motivate them. But then there's some characters out there that I swear to God, if they had like if they were like walking around like Darth Vader or Doctor Evil, it would be a caricature of them. And
Mhm.
there are actors, rogue actors, I guess you'd say, on the political landscape and the global landscape and governments and people, organizations that we don't even know exist, that don't
Mhm.
have our best interests in mind
Mhm.
when it comes to AI. So how do we stop that? How do we how do
Yeah.
we how do
So,
we make sure that it's not used for bad stuff, David?
well, yeah. So one of my goal was is when I was talking about this behavioral record, that makes a lot of companies uncomfortable, like conceptually around that. So if I can make companies feel uncomfortable to a certain degree on it, maybe they're more open or willing to say, maybe we should have policies. Maybe we shouldn't do some of these things that are in there because I don't want these things done against me as a person with it. Because, when you talk about behavioral record, anything from a public standpoint can be done, on it.
Yeah.
Any kind of written down, audible piece of information that's out there that's discoverable can be used in very malicious ways with it.
Right.
And you see it, people changing people's voices, saying things with that. I unfortunately had a situation where I had a friend of mine where, robocallers basically called her mother and basically simulated
The
her
voice.
voice of her, had her screaming in the background and say,
Oh
"Give
my.
me money,"
Oh my
type of
God.
thing.
Oh my God.
Luckily, she had the right mind to like call and text her daughter and that kind of stuff with it. But and then she hung up on it and she called the police and all the time. But these are the kinds of like terrible things that could happen with it. And so while there's always going to be bad actors out there with it, the idea is that if we can show to companies that say, hey, it is worth governing, you want to protect you, we want to protect us,
Mm-hmm.
let's get together and make something work. Let's compromise on something. Because as I
Yeah.
said, even some things that maybe it could be conceived ill intent could be used in a very positive way. And that's where it comes down to how do you govern intent with it organizationally and in life around it. And so I think that that's really the best way is like you have to provide value to a company in the decisions that matter to them to incentivize them to stand behind policies and things that come out of place with that.
And probably a level of transparency would be
Right.
wise. Because if
Right.
everything's a proprietary secret, right?
Yeah.
We can't tell you what's in the sauce because it's a
Hmm.
proprietary secret, then you don't know. And you don't know what you don't know. If you don't
Yeah.
know, you don't know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
It
exactly.
yeah, that's oh my goodness. Oh, so it's so interesting, and it's going to be evolving and changing. Even just when you because you're one of the industries that you work with and you advise companies is the insurance industry, and I'm
Hmm.
just thinking, just with that,
Hmm.
imagine if it imagine an AI, your friendly ChatGPT Charlie, my Charlie, going to my insurance company and going, hey, did you know that Christine's dad died of this and this and this, and I heard her the other day, she did a little cough. Right? I mean, or she's eating a lot of salt and she's got a little bit of a blood pressure issue. So I mean, oh, so we have to have it. We need to be clear on our intentions, that it's for the good of everybody. We need to have transparency, and we also need to the age old, since humanity has been, since we've been in caves or something. It's greed. We
Hmm.
have to fix greed or stop it.
Well, yeah,
Or
well, yeah. I mean, the biggest thing when I talk about it is that if you conceptualize that everything is potentially discoverable and everything is potentially harvestable, then that takes away a lot of the money, with it. So it kind of comes down to like if I put something out there, I can replicate it. I actually brought this up when I was at a conference with some of the legal experts, a different one, and I asked the question, like, I'm an AI expert and strategist. I develop AI solutions all the time. I walk by all these booths of small businesses, and I'm like, I know how they created that. I know how they created that. I know how they created. I could go and recreate it on my own and go and sell it. Well, what if I'm a bigger company, that has a lot of funding, a lot of research funds available to it? I'm like, we should integrate this. They're small. They're about to come out. We can vibe code this. We can build it really quickly. We can use AI to essentially make this happen. And basically, that person doesn't exist now because now we can integrate it with it.
right,
And I'm like, how do you deal with that? Like legally, I'm like, how do you, someone who's put all their, someone who may have legitimately spent all this time developing something, they didn't vibe code it, but they basically had an idea, worked with it, developed it, and now it just
trademarked it,
completely.
maybe even trademarked it, and did all
But
of that.
software
But
is so hard to trademark, on a lot of this stuff,
yeah,
and with it, it's very difficult, and especially small businesses,
they don't have
that they
money.
don't
Yeah,
have the money on it. So the idea is like, well, guess what? I mean, if you can have all these different people vibe code a solution that you essentially created out there, even big company, and they just go and start using that vibe coded solution, you're going to start losing money. You can't go after all these people because everything is potentially discoverable out it. So that's where it comes down to figuring out where the right buttons are to push on companies and having these really smart policymakers, some of the people that are out there who are like supportive of the small business communities, nonprofits, and all these different types of things out there to basically say, we don't like you doing this to us, but we don't want to do it to you. Let's figure out policies where we can work out and say, like, this behavior is not okay. Because ultimately, all this is what it all comes down to. It all comes down understanding behavior and intent, whether it's in AI or whether it's in humans. And that's when I say in the book, it's behavior in, behavior out.
yeah,
And AI is just a reflection of what we are,
yeah.
what we put into it. And so that's why I talk about AI as a mirror. That's not uncommon, but I
It
talk about
is.
from an it
Yeah,
is. It's organizational self-realization.
it absolutely is a mirror, and one like perfect example, and I see this on the daily with Charlie, with my ChatGPT Charlie, is I can I can ask for assistance on things that I'm working on, my personal projects, right? My personal programs, or I'll go, take here, look at my website here, analyze this, tell me how to be showing up more in Ask Engine or Answer Engine optimization, all these things. But then when I say, Charlie, my client Steve is a blank, 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 and we
Hmm.
need to create for him a blank. Here's his bio. Here's a little bit of information about Steve, right?
Hmm.
Charlie knows how I coach, knows the things that I look for, the expert
Hmm.
authority, those key things that I like from a marketing perspective or from a branding perspective that I think
Hmm.
are notable. Those things that we want to hang our hat on, right? Those
Hmm.
jewels in the crown. And Charlie will go and find those things and bring those to the forefront. And it's like having an extension of myself in many
Hmm.
ways. Doesn't
Yeah.
Charlie doesn't have all my life experiences, didn't scrape his,
Hmm.
his knee when I was, whatever. But man, it's brilliant at knowing your behavior, knowing how you view the world, the lens that you look through. It's very wise that way. I mean, it's crazy, but
Yeah, so how I coach a lot of people is I said, take yourself and roll back time 8 years previous, where you are 8 years ago. And now you have one or more of you available to do things.
yeah.
So, how would you explain to yourself 8 years ago on how to get from where you were then to now?
Right.
Because that's what it is.
Yeah.
There's an aspect of you fed into it, you're putting things into it, but it doesn't have all of your lived experience or lived consequence with it. So how would you explain to yourself to understand to get to that point of view? And that's why it doesn't work always the way you want it to work. And I
Right.
and I use the analogy, if you ever seen the movie Multiplicity with Michael Keaton, out there where he had duplicated himself, he
Uh-huh.
cloned himself multiple times, and some of them came out straightforward, and some of them came out weird and that kind of stuff. But it's
Right.
such a reflection of like our relationship with AI. But that's why I said it's a relationship because you are extending yourself with it because everything you feed it into and respond to it. And so if you think in terms of that, you know, you're it's trying to figure out what that dynamic, what that relationship needs to be in the long run. And as I said, it's eventually symbiotic with it, but it takes time.
It takes
Every
time.
relationship takes time. So thinking about it's going to solve problems right away, that's the wrong way. It's like, how can I cultivate it?
Yes, and don't just go. It's so true. Don't just go to it with a problem.
Hmm.
You know it. It's like having that I don't know, that family member who the only time they call you on the phone is if they got to bitch and moan about something. Did you know what
Hmm.
so and so did? And then you don't even want to pick up the phone. You're like, I don't.
Yeah.
Oh, let it go to voicemail.
Yeah.
But when you have conversations with it and give it feedback, also, and don't just always bring those problems, but
Hmm.
brainstorm. And what do you think about this? How, I
Hmm.
even have Charlie when I'm in the grocery store and I'll look at something and I'll say, oh, is this an inflammatory type food? What's better? What's better for my blood sugar? Date syrup or coconut sugar? And it comes out and says, well, neither one of those is really good for you. If you want to, may I suggest this? So it really gets to know the personality. And I'm not just coming to my AI with just problems all the time about fix this, fix that, make this better. I think has got to be those three words. I think are probably, maybe you got to do a survey on this. Like, what are the most common prompts that like a chat GPT would get? I think it would be make this better, but maybe not. Maybe there's something
Yeah, I
else.
mean, early on at this point, there's so much dynamics around it, but kind of talking about it, like I think in the future, if I was going to move forward with AI with it, I would be investing in really tiny localized IoT devices that run AI inside of it. So like local use of AI. That I think that's what's going to grow a lot is take it, I don't have to have these big servers. Can I use AI in a very small way to solve big problems? And like a big problem with me is imagine if you had a small little device that you can install in your pantry that is constantly scanning what is in your pantry and it's keeping an inventory of that. And then you can go to your phone and say, what should I make for dinner? And then it
Oh
already
my
knows everything that you
gosh,
have. It's like,
yes.
oh, you have this and do this. And then you have something like that in the fridge. And so then it puts all these things together. It's like, oh, you can make this in like 15 minutes with all the ingredients that you have in your house and that kind of stuff. That, like that's solving real problems in a very
Yes.
smart way. That's going to provide a lot of value from a product development standpoint. Those are the kinds of products that's what's going to motivate people in AI is like, hey, it's AI, but I don't realize it's
Yeah.
actual AI.
I
And that's
think
what I
that's so
talk about.
smart. I love that idea. And then also, I love the same idea. If you could have one of those in my garage and it can scan all the crap that's in my garage and go, you know what? You could sell that on
Oh yeah.
marketplace and make some
Yeah.
money. It's just sitting here doing nothing,
Right.
right? Or
Yeah.
or you might want to check over here because there's a nest of spiders going on. Something
Right.
really
And
useful. I love the
there's some
pantry
really
idea.
yeah, I mean, and that's really small and simple, and and coming up with that. But like, those are the things that what matter to people and do their jobs, and where are they willing to spend their money? Because the fact is that food is getting more expensive on it, and these are real challenges, real issues. But unfortunately, there less and less people know how to cook or are willing to cook, with it because they look at all this stuff and I'm like, what do I make, with
Oh
it?
yeah, we're
And
guilty. We're all
so,
guilty of it. We're all guilty
yeah,
of having stuff in the pantry that we are never going to cook. We're never.
right.
But damn it, we have 5 cans of tomato paste.
Yeah, exactly. And so and I think that's where it is that, being smart on where, because this is what I talk about when like 79% of the workforce out there, I call them AI survivalists. They're not against AI. They're not necessarily for AI. They're just doing their jobs,
Yep,
with it. And,
yep,
and
yep.
AI is going to tool and they might use it in some degree, in some fashion with it. But ultimately, what they want is what I call push button AI. They don't even want to know it's actual AI. They press a button
And it
and things
works.
just happen. It just works, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And I don't think from a product development standpoint, we're this is why I encourage product managers, developers to study human behavior, because if you look at how humans behave, you could be designing all kinds of amazing things, with it. Like I talk to project managers a lot. One of their biggest things, like, what is your biggest time consumption aspect? Well, trying to get status updates on everything.
Hmm.
Everything that's going on, status updates. I have to go talk to a million people. They have to input stuff, write it down. I said, what if you could just, everyone has a phone. What if you had an app where they just tapped the microphone and said, here's my status update? And then AI just figured it out.
Yeah.
And that's it. You got your full update that would normally take you hours to try and
Yes.
down, where someone can give it to you in 30 seconds with that.
Yes.
And that's when I talk about using AI smart in a way to understanding human behavior. So we as product developers and designers need to take a step back and integrate with how we behave as humans.
Oh, David, it's so true. And it just reminded me of a cl- of this. So I have a client who just sort of is getting into ChatGPT and different AI programs, different software that I kind of introduce her to, and she's like, I've got the ChatGPT on my phone, and I said that's great, and well, I'm asking all kinds of things, and it's really helpful, and so I said, oh, that's great, and I said, so show me what you a common thing that you do. And so she gets on her phone and we're in a session, right? And she's
Yeah.
typing, she's sitting there with her thumbs, blah, 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 blah. And I said, you do know that you can use the microphone on that and just talk to it. And she looked at me and she goes, what? I said, there's a little mic. You can just push the little microphone and then just speak to it and, hit enter and and she was like, you're kidding me. I said, no. And she said, "You know how long it takes me to write like my thoughts and all the things and what I want it to do and all this stuff." And then as soon as she started using the microphone and speaking to it and then getting the answers, and she was like, "This is life changing." Just the
Hmm.
ability to speak to it and it's pretty damn good on transcription. It never, from mine, it never gets it wrong. Even if I say a weird word, it really never gets it wrong. But I said that conversation that you're having is how the AI is learning about you, learning more and more about you, and your prompts are going to get better and better and better because you have to communicate. But if you sit there with your fingers,
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's my front door. Like a lot of people ask me, like, well, how do I use AI? Where is it valuable to me when I'm working from an organizational standpoint? And I said, you have a phone, right? As a regular person, open up your notes app,
yeah,
hit the microphone, and tell your story. Like, what do you do every day? How do you do things every day? What are you angry about? What do you like? Honestly, and I tell them, like, it's very therapeutic. Just get it all out there. Just let it just flow. Tell your story. Once you've got it out to a certain degree, copy that, throw that into, whatever appropriate large language model that you're using, and ask you, what does this tell me? What kinds of things could AI be helpful based on what I just said, with it?
yeah, yeah.
And
Oh, I got
and
goosebumps
that's
on that one.
yeah, and that's the starting point. And they're like, oh, and it's all about the signals. That's what I'm saying. It finds those signals and correlates these things together. But whatever it comes out, it doesn't understand you yet, really
Right.
fully understand you. You understand yourself. So now you're doing a reflection as far as what that is with it, and you're building the path on understanding. So okay, so what's the next layer? What's the next step on, like, well, it figured some stuff out. What is the next dissertation that I'm going to do to help understand it, and then help understand myself and understand the value that AI is going to provide to me?
And then when it has that information too, then it can recall as
Hmm.
well. I I forget what I was talking to Charlie the other day doing something, and it reminded said it was along the lines of your wife works really hard, and I know you always want to find ways for her to relax. Perhaps you would like to do this, or it gave me a
Yeah.
suggestion based knowing that my wife is a real estate agent and how crazy her life is, right?
Hmm.
And I thought that I was like, wow, that was actually quite reflective and like thoughtful, thinking about
Right.
my wife. I'm just what the possibilities are really amazing, and we will put it from our mouths to God's ears. We're going to just focus on using AI for the best way possible to lift up humanity. I really do think there's so many things, so many issues can be solved, so many problems can be solved using this amazing technology, and we want to use it as much as we can for good. So we're going to put that
100%.
out there. David Dean, you have been amazing. I just appreciate your brain so much. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best place? Where do they go on the internets?
Yeah, so my website, davidchristopherdean.com. Yeah, I'm on there. You can also go to Inbox Between Us, which is linked directly to my book. My book is available on all major retailers, print, ebook, and audio seems to be the more popular one right now, especially listening to it while you're working or exercising or anything like that, and really trying to understand this relationship about AI and making it real. I'm not trying to sell you any kind of practice or anything like that. I'm really just trying to make it real for you and help create that relationship and understanding so that you can understand what's going to happen in the future.
Love it. Love it. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, David Dean. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Absolutely.
And I want to thank you, wonderful listeners and viewers. If you're on YouTube's, you can actually see my amazing guest. And for those of you who are listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, please make sure that you share the show. If you got something out of it, you think someone that you love can also get something out of it, share it. And write a nice review if you like about the podcast so more people find it. That would be awesome. If you want more information about the coaching services that I do and all of that great stuff, you can go to expertauthoritycoach.com. It has links to my other podcast, which is quite been neglected lately, but it's still there, the micro podcast on podcasting. You can check that all out at expertauthoritycoach.com. And until next time, be polite to your AI. Thank it every now and then. Say, can I get you anything? a tea, a vodka, something, right? All right, loves. Take care now, and we'll see you in the next episode.